For years, gang violence, prostitution, drug addiction, fatherless children, and utter hopelessness defined this neighborhood, tucked behind the heart of downtown Nashville.
If you come over here, you're going to get robbed. And drugs going day and night and day.
Your mama didn't want you outside in late night because you'll hear gunfire, you'll hear the fighting, you'll hear friends feuding with each other.
We hear gunshots, immediately followed by a group of guys running, jumping in their cars and driving off, immediately followed by a group of guys carrying, like hands and feet, a dude who had just been shot into another car and driving off.
Though Joe Johnson was a name within itself, and it was a name that resonated in fear in a lot of people. When you say Joe Johnson, it was like, nah, I'm not going over there. My kid's not going over there. You're not going to have my child over in Joe Johnson. Because Joe Johnson, it got real bad.
The statistic in Joe Johnson community was that the average age of a woman was 21, and the average age of a male was 11 years old. So it was mainly all children and single moms.
Out of those 527 single-family homes, 23 had fathers in the house.
And we didn't have a lot of father figures because our fathers were absent. Most of our fathers were absent in our household, or either they had been killed in that time. So the women were led to be the strong backbone.
It was super rare you'd see a man. I mean, they just weren't around. There just weren't any dads.
Out of all the projects in the Nashville area, Joe Johnson was the roughest.
Notorious for its dangerous streets and overwhelming sense of despair, the Joe Johnson Projects, better known as JoJo, represented the darker side of Music City, a side that many people preferred to simply overlook.
I was like, what in the world is a government housing project? And who lives there? And people start telling me, oh, you know, mostly black people, sometimes Hispanic, and, you know, minority, whatever, you know, it's just there. But the summation of my conversation, my questions, was pretty much, don't worry about it, it's dangerous. That's what people would say. They're just kind of like, man, you don't even want to go there. You don't want to really think about it too much.
The first time I walked through the community, it was a dark, gloomy jungle. It was violent. You just didn't know what was going to happen next. It was scary.
I was listening to the news, and they were telling about the worst streets in Nashville. And they said the streets from South 13th to South 16th. That's us. It was us. That's exactly where we were. And nobody really wanted to volunteer and come down here because they were frightened of the community.
It got so bad in Joe Johnson that a lot of police didn't come over there. Police didn't want to ride around because, you know, it's almost like a death trap.
It was a rough and tumble area, a lot of fights and a lot of violence.
The vicious cycle of poverty continued for decades, with roots that could be traced all the way back to the late 1800s.
It's named Joe Johnson for a reason, because there was a general of the Civil War. It's named after him. And of course, that was one of the great seasons of contention for our whole nation, and it really defined so much of who Nashville was, because the Battle of Franklin, the Battle of Nashville, and around that became the first legalized prostitution was here in Nashville, and it had choleras in 1873, and all these. Many times Nashville was almost completely wiped out by disease. And if it wasn't disease, it was war. If it wasn't war, it was flooding. If it wasn't flooding, it was tornadoes. It's some sort of disaster always marked these pivotal times in Nashville's history.
So there JoJo sat, trapped in the darkness, lost in the hopelessness and wounded by neglect, surrounded by churches and in the buckle of the Bible Belt. JoJo remained unchanged and ignored, until one day it caught the eye of an unlikely advocate.